lives matter.
So how can we make race matter less?
Maybe by making black and brown lives matter more.
Race Matters, next time on Philosophy Talk.
Listen to Philosophy Talk every Tuesday at noon on KSJE 90.9 FM, Farmington. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, which is officially baby-friendly. This evidence-based initiative is designed to support mother-baby bonding and optimal infant feeding practices by upholding the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding. San Juan Regional Medical Center, officially baby-friendly, and serving the Four Corners since 1910. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock on this Monday morning, February 3rd. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin, and thanks for tuning in to KSJE. 90.9 FM over the air in San Juan County, 103.3 FM now over the air in Durango, Colorado, and you can hear us everywhere by going to our website, ksje.com. You can also see us everywhere from our visual radio platforms. We are streaming live this morning out to the KSJE YouTube channel and to our KSJE Facebook page. So thank you all for joining us on all of those platforms today. Coming up, let's talk about the weather because it's going to be a little bit of a change in the weather today. We are expecting a mostly cloudy day today with a chance of rain and snow showers, scattered rain and snow showers, maybe starting up late this morning, early this afternoon. No accumulation is expected here in the Farmington area, but you could see some at the higher elevations. Today's high, 48 degrees in Farmington today. Overnight, more chances for scattered snow showers to low 17. But take a look, much colder weather tomorrow with a high of 33 degrees on Tuesday, 10 degrees Tuesday night, then mostly sunny but cold on Wednesday with a high of 35. Overnight low of 20 degrees on Wednesday night. 44, beginning to warm back up on Thursday, sunny and 51 on Friday, and lower 50s again on Saturday. And the winds are going to be part of the weather story today and tonight. We're expecting some gusty winds in the forecast with wind gusts up to maybe 35 miles per hour or so. So those are potentially damaging winds in the forecast with that mix of rain or snow showers widely scattered in the forecast for today. You know, we always tell you that visual radio can take you places. We will take you to a place right now, which is Lake Tahoe. It is Homewood Mountain, California. The view over Lake Tahoe, where it's currently 11 degrees this morning. They are expecting a sunny day today with a high of 26 degrees and a low of 11. The wind chill, though, at Homewood Mountain makes it feel like 4 degrees this morning. But that is the current weather from just a few moments ago. Pretty view over Lake Tahoe in California this morning. Back here at home, coming up on the radio in the next few moments, I'm going to be chatting with New Mexico State Senator Steve Neville from San Juan County. He has taken some time out of his schedule in Santa Fe. We spoke on Friday. We'll be playing that for you this morning about the current legislative session going on. It is the midpoint or so of the 30-day session, and Senator Neville will be talking a little bit about what's been going on, some of the bills that are coming before the legislative body, and what he feels about some of these controversial bills that have been introduced, like the red flag bill and maybe some of the early childhood education bills that we've been hearing about, that and much, much more. We'll talk Energy Transition Act as well. It's coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE, so we hope you'll stick around for that. Then later on, we'll be talking with Lewis Campbell from Synergy Computer Systems here in Farmington. It's our weekly talk about technology, 8:50 a.m. You'll hear that right here on KSJE. Next hour, Mick Hess will take us roving with the arts. And today, Mick is featuring some piano music from composer Franz Liszt. That's coming up today on Roving with the Arts. Don't forget, of course, in addition to Facebook and YouTube, you can connect with KSJE on Twitter and also follow us on Instagram as well. Joining me this morning in our visual radio studio to talk a little bit about the legislative session that's happening in Santa Fe, San Juan County Senator Steve Neville is joining us from Santa Fe. Senator Neville, thank you for joining me.
You bet. Glad to be here.
It's nice to see you and hear what you've been up to in Santa Fe. I know it's a short session, a 30-day session, and so we are speaking Friday morning. This is airing Monday. Can you give us kind of a status update on how the session is going thus far?
Well, it's, the first week or so is mostly bill introductions, a lot of just paperwork and procedural stuff. We get things going. We've been doing a few confirmations. Senate confirms any of the governor's appointees. We've been doing quite a bit of that the last few days. The bills are just really starting to hit committees heavily in the last couple of days, and we'll probably be overwhelmed with them next week. And then as they come out of the committees, they'll hit the floor, and we'll spend the last 2 weeks voting on a lot of issues. We try to get it voted on and over to the House so that they can do the same thing, and they have to run the bills through their committees, and so it gets really crammed up as the time goes on. And that's just the way the process works. You really can't change it much. You just hope that you can get it all done in 30 days.
Understood. Anything that surprised you thus far? Any bills that you weren't expecting maybe to see or hear about?
No, I pretty well had heard about most of them. There is one that comes up today. It's on Canadian drugs, getting those, I'm talking about prescription drugs.
Yes, sir.
Getting those into the state of New Mexico through some of our, Medicaid and those kind of things so that we can try to lower the cost of drugs. Unbelievable what some of these drugs are costing nowadays, and it's a very confusing and unbelievable system. We need to do something about that. So this bill may have some potential. We'll see. We're going to hear that later today.
Interesting. I know that I think has been done in other states, so it wouldn't be anything new, right?
Right. Well, the feds released have released that. They're allowing that to happen, and so states have to make some kind of an application process. Not quite familiar how all that works, but we have to pass this legislation to be able to do it.
Okay, all right. The governor's budget and revenue, of course, is up again this year. I think it's another almost record revenue.
$800 million additional. Last year's over $1 billion, and this year another pushing $1 billion. So we've had good revenues come in. The unknown question, and I said on the budget committee, the finance committee, is whether this is recurring dollars or not. We think some of it is. Oil and gas tends to be the major contributor to our good fortune the last couple of years.
Right.
To the tune of 40% of our total revenues are oil and gas related right now, and it's you never know how long that you've been around San Juan County. You know how the oil and gas prices fluctuate and the revenues go up and down. Right now, the natural gas is not doing well, so we're having issues in San Juan County. But down in the southeast corner, the oil is flowing heavily, and they're making a lot of money, and they're paying a lot of taxes, and so the state's benefiting nicely.
Right. I was just going to say what a difference a couple of years makes, because there wasn't too long ago we were talking about budget cuts, and I imagine the feelings around the roundhouse are a little different when there's more money to go around. Now you have to just decide how to spend it, I suppose.
I've signed requests for something like $80 million for San Juan College. I'll probably have about, between all of the legislators, we'll probably have $8 or $9 million at the most to spend on local projects that we can authorize. So we've got about 10 times the requests that we'll have money for.
Wow. Well, I'm not surprised, but thank you. I know you and the delegation does a lot of work for your constituents back here in San Juan County, in any way to kind of share the wealth. When there is wealth to share, I know is much appreciated by all those making those requests. So
we have a unique system when it comes to the capital dollars, the dollars that are used for infrastructure improvements. San Juan County legislators all meet in concert. We sit down, and usually in my office, and we decide exactly how much money we've got, and we looked at all of the requests, and we try to pick the highest priorities. And we try to pick things like the bridge that was about to fall in over by McGee Park,
right.
The sewer lagoon that was about to wash out at Kirtland, or the flood control structure that's there by the high school, Piedra Vista High School. We try to pick projects like that are critical to a lot of people, and they may or may not be in my district. They may or may not be in anybody else's, but we try to pick the ones that are most beneficial to the most citizens of the county.
Well, and I guess your colleagues then can see a unified request, too, which kind of helps, I suppose, get those things through, right?
That's right.
Very good. Senator Neville, I do want to ask you about a couple of controversial things that, again, have shown up at the legislature. One of those is these red flag laws. I believe the governor's in favor of some type of legislation along those lines about confiscating firearms if someone is thought to be unstable or agitated or in some other capacity. Can you give us some of your thoughts on legislation like that?
Well, I just participated in a press conference that was hosted by the NRA, and I spoke against that bill. That is a bill that infringes on personal rights, in my opinion. I think that it's a civil order. You go in and you say, my husband is threatening to kill me, and I want you to take all the guns away, or something on that order. Or this person's suicidal. That's another reason why you might authorize it. But it's a civil order. There's no due process in the initial action. So the sheriff is sent out to somebody's house. They don't know what the conditions are, whether it's dangerous or not. It's a civil order, so they just go knock on the door. They don't have any SWAT teams or anything like that if it's dangerous or if it's even justified. The thing is that there's not much, there's no proof necessary to initiate one of these, very little anyway. The judge issues a civil order, and then the sheriff is obligated to carry it out. It fringes on more than just the Second Amendment. It gets into the search and seizure and a lot of other things. So we oppose it because it's too broad. It's not specific. There's no due process. Prior to that, it causes a lot of burdens as far as how the sheriff deals with it. If he confiscates someone's firearms, I've got a number that I've inherited from my dad that are not necessarily valuable, but they're valuable to me, and I certainly wouldn't want the sheriff to lose those firearms or break them or any of those kind of things. There's a lot of other issues. We had testimony from a couple of ladies who had been in domestic violence situations in this press conference, and both of them were in a situation where even if this red flag would have been in place, they would have been in jeopardy irregardless. It doesn't prevent someone from killing themselves. It doesn't prevent them from being violent. It doesn't prevent them from hiding a firearm from the sheriff if they suspect that this might happen. It's just an unfair process, and it's certainly not one that I can support. And I don't think many of the people in San Juan County, if they know the full facts, can support it either.
Understood. Well, I think the sheriff has gone on record saying that he has problems, as you mentioned, and others across the state too, correct?
Right. The sheriff, Sheriff Ferrari, was actually at this press conference. He testified briefly as well, and most of the sheriffs, other than a couple in the Rio Grande Valley, most of the sheriffs around the state are opposed to this because it does violate so many of the provisions of the Bill of Rights.
Understood what you're saying. I know on the other side, though, the governor and others would probably say we need to try to do more to protect folks from some of this gun violence that we're seeing in our state and across the country. Whether this is the right bill or not, I guess, remains to be seen.
Well, we all agree on that. That's something we need to do. Most of it has to do with mental health issues, and we have to figure out a way to address that. PTSD from military, from people who, substance abuse, there's all kinds of reasons why people get involved in this. It's ironic, the incident in Aztec Schools, which is in my district, the young man that perpetuated those shootings, he was actually investigated, I understand, by the FBI. But they investigated his brother more than him because he was actually using his brother's computer when they were noting some unusual postings. This was all reported in the press. I don't have all the details. So they could conceivably have enacted a red flag against the wrong person, and it wouldn't have stopped the incident. That's the bad thing, is that there's just not a proper process in this. What we needed was to have a way of identifying that young man and getting him the mental health he needed, and that would have had more to do with stopping the incident.
Understood. I hear what you're saying, Senator Neville. Let me ask you a little bit about the legislation that was passed last year, and that was that Energy Transition Act, which certainly affects San Juan County, the San Juan Generating Station. I believe the Supreme Court just came out to say to the PRC that should be the law of the land as this transition happens with San Juan Generating Station. Is there any other legislation this year that's trying to maybe clarify some of the things of the ETA, or is that over and done with?
We've been monitoring legislation that might affect the city of Farmington, assuming the operation of that facility closely. We don't think that the ETA the Supreme Court decision changes much. We think that obviously PNM wants to shut that plant down and move on to more renewables, but and that's their business decision. I can certainly respect that. But and they passed the legislation to allow them to do it. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think it affects the situation with the city of Farmington. I may be wrong. It'd be best to ask the city manager or the mayor, but I think we're okay as long as they don't introduce some new legislation that alters our ability to be able to negotiate with Enchant or the other entities that might be involved in getting that plant converted.
Understood. And I know a lot of folks were concerned about that Energy Transition Act because it had in it the money to help pay for some of the severance things for the miners and the power plant workers and the retraining and all of that. And so having that decision, I guess, clarified by the Supreme Court is helpful to move forward.
In the event the plant does close and we don't get to transition it over to carbon capture, then we certainly need as many of those dollars as possible. They're frankly not adequate because they don't quite do everything we need to do to try to resolve the problem. It doesn't resolve the bond issues with schools. It doesn't resolve some of the lost revenues for the county and the college. Those are not part of that bill, and there are some good things in there. They help with severance. They help with retraining and some of those things, but the retraining will train people to probably go to jobs in other counties, so that's not going to help our local economy.
Right. Well, that's probably maybe true, and I know some of the replacement power folks were a little disappointed when PNM announced their preferred plan was to put that just outside of the borders of San Juan County.
Right, and we have protested that. Don't know how that'll come out. We've argued that that's not exactly what the intent of the bill was. The language is a little wishy-washy in that bill, and we argued with it at the time, but we didn't get it changed, unfortunately. So it does permit them to do some replacement power outside of the county, and that certainly hurts Central Consolidated's tax base, and the rest of the county as well.
The county's tax base. I know the assessor was quite concerned about that, and with good reason. Let me ask you a little bit more about the budget. I think one of your colleagues is maybe talking if we continue to get big surpluses or increases of revenue, maybe some kind of tax rebate for residents. Is that some discussions being made at Santa Fe?
We've thrown that idea out. It's not in the budget, and it's not. I don't think that's going to happen.
I see.
We've had. There's two sides to this story. I certainly believe if we have excess dollars, we ought to give it back to the citizens. But should it go back to the individual citizens, or should it go back to the southeast corner where it was generated, and to those companies that paid those bills, or somewhere else? Mm-hmm. The other thing the other side of the equation is that we've gone 10 years without much in the way of increased revenues up until the last year or so, and we have a lot of holes to fill. We've got a lot of infrastructure that's deteriorated. We need new roads, especially in the southeast. We need better salaries for our teachers, so there's arguments both sides of that equation.
I understand. Got you. And I know there's been a lot of talk, too, Senator Neville, about early childhood education, maybe some of those programs and things along that line, and I think some monies are being funneled to that. That's one of, the governor's pet projects, if you will, and is that getting some support there as well from your party?
Yeah, $300 and I believe $40 million, something on that order of what we consider our reserves. The reserves are what we set aside in case things do go bad. We try to keep, in the past we used to try to keep somewhere between 5 and 10%. We recognize that oil and gas is volatile, and we finally got people to wake up to that. So we're looking at much larger reserves, in excess of 20%, more like 25%. If we maintain those large reserves, that money's just sitting around. So one of the proposals that the governor has, and I think is a good idea, is to take and designate a portion of that excess, that surplus that we keep around as a contingency fund, basically, is to designate part of that, the earnings off of part of that, not the dollars themselves, but the earnings off of that to go toward early childhood. It would generate several $1 million every year, and every year we face a proposal to tap into the permanent fund to increase the take of the permanent fund, which will be a long-term damage to that fund. That's to replace oil and gas, by the way.
Right.
There's always been a proposal for any number of years to tap into that fund. This might be a reasonable substitute for that and allow us to have some money for early childhood and at the same time not damage the permanent fund.
Understood. And I know a lot of folks, when they talk about our state, which we love and we live here and we want to see it grow and prosper, but we do have this, seems like sometimes generational poverty and things along that line. And a lot of folks talk about maybe this as being a way to help some of these children out of that cycle.
Well, the lawsuit that was, Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit that was passed, decided last year, against the state requires that we try to figure out ways to improve, particularly in the Native American areas, Gallup and Central District and Zuni, in particular those districts and some of the other low-income areas, to try to identify ways to improve the educational outcomes in those districts. That's part of where a lot of this excess money has gone last year, and some of it will go there this year as well, is to try to resolve the issues in that lawsuit and at the same time to accomplish improving our overall education performance.
I see. And is that going to be enough money, do you think, to help really tackle this problem that's just so widespread, or is that...
It's widespread. It's broader than just dollars, I grant you that. We've got to figure out how and why these situations exist, and we've got to attack that. It'll take money to do that, but we've got to figure out the real issues behind it. We're not going to get anywhere with the lawsuit just by pumping money into it. We've got to do more than that. We've got to figure out the causes of these low performance results that we're getting out of the schools in some of these areas.
I see. Senator Neville, we just have a couple of minutes left because I know you're busy in Santa Fe there, but I wanted to ask you a bit. We had a economic development meeting with the city of Farmington looking at their strategic plan for 2040 and, of course, talking about diversifying the economy. Retirees is one thing they were talking about. I know there was a proposal maybe to not tax retirement benefits. Is that something that's getting any traction there?
Yeah, there's two proposals. One, Social Security.
Okay.
Not tax Social Security beyond a certain, up to a certain point. I think $24,000 is the number that's in there. Anyone who earns up to $24,000, they wouldn't tax that amount. And then the other one was for military retirements. That's especially valuable to the Alamogordo and Clovis and those kind of areas where they have a lot of retirees coming out of the base, and maybe they've bought homes or established themselves in those towns, and it helps if they can retain those retirees in Clovis or Alamogordo. It helps their economy as far as the long range. And most states don't tax military or Social Security retirements.
But we do.
But we do. Yes,
I see. And there's maybe a bill to change that then?
There are bills for both of those, for military as well as Social Security.
Got you. Okay. All right. Very good. And then the film industry, that was another discussion about, again, for Farmington's economy in the state. We've seen a lot of investment from the movie and television industry in the Albuquerque area and the state. Those tax incentives certainly help that. Any more talk there about the film industry this year?
Well, the film industry, that's kind of a mixed bag deal. The film industry, we actually write checks to the filmmakers to produce these and it attracts a lot of interest. We get a lot of films. We've got Netflix in Albuquerque.
Right.
We're getting a lot of filming up in Farmington. There's a provision, and I actually supported this provision. I had a bill that did it. I co-signed on last year. It got merged into the bill, but would allow an additional 5% incentive for the filmmakers to come outside of Albuquerque and Santa Fe. So that's how we get them to come to Farmington or to go to Clovis or go to anywhere else in the state that's not the metro area of Albuquerque. That's been useful. It's actually drawn some of these film productions out there. But the other side of it is we're taking tax dollars and paying 25% of the cost of all of the New Mexico expenditures, and that's not necessarily, it's taking all of our corporate revenue, in fact, more than what we actually generate from corporate income tax to actually pay for that. So it's an expensive proposition. We don't know where it's going to end up, but there's no limits on it now. It's somewhere around $150 million is best guessed at this point.
I see. Well, and it certainly is a a very useful incentive, I guess, to get some of this activity in the state. And
it's useful to get the activity and promote the state, I grant you that. And it's debatable whether it's useful. We don't know if we're getting enough jobs to offset the cost or not. There's been studies, and they're all over the map.
I see. And last year, I know the state gave San Juan County $1 million in capital outlay money for film studio, and I think there's another request for a little bit more this year as they do more studies to figure out what all that will cost. And people seem to think that might be a good investment for this part of the state outside the Rio Grande corridor.
Well, as long as the state's willing to fund 25% of the cost of the New Mexico expenditures, we need to get our share up here. And so that studio may be a good idea. That's one of the things that when we all meet together next week, and the delegation from San Juan County, we're going to sit down and we're going to decide. We're going to have $8 or $10 million, whatever it is, and we're going to decide where that's spent. And that's one of the proposals, one of the requests we have to consider. Understood. So that meeting hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened. We haven't got the exact dollar amounts yet, so we don't even know how much we can authorize. I see. All right. Well, Senator Neville, I appreciate your time. I know you've got constituents maybe waiting to meet with you outside your office, and so I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. Anytime. Just give me some notice. Thank you. Of course, we will. Thank you very much. That is State Senator Steve Neville from his office in Santa Fe speaking to me right here on KSJE. And I'll be back with more in just a moment, everyone.
Harvesting technology to cover for the growing